Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk about my experiences building a 3D topo map, and hopefully you can learn from them. So another way of describing this is how I spent my spring break in 2023, because I basically only had a month to work on this project, and I had never made a 3D topo map before, nor could I find any instructions online about how to do it. Besides kind of this, the cardboard method, which was my original plan. But no, I didn't do that. So how did this come about? I'd always wanted to do a 3D map, let me first say that. But I also had this wetlands project that I had worked on with my undergrad geography capstone class, and that project looked at the history of kind of land use, and we zeroed in on wetlands on Kent State campus. And so I got this brilliant idea to do all sorts of things that came out of that project. And one of them was to sign up for this art exhibit, and it was going to have all the newspaper articles and maps that we found of the wetlands. But I also was like, well, there's this big empty space. I know, I'll make a 3D map. So I ended up working on that. And so what I'm going to do is walk through the wetlands research really quickly, because I really wanted to show you guys some of the cool maps and photos that we found. So this is Kent State campus. Kent State's in Northeast Ohio. In 1910-ish. It was a forest and farm fields. We found a cool old map that had Swampy Lake, later renamed Blackbird Lake, on it. And we found out that they used to fill it with water, and people would go ice skating on it in the winter. We found a swamp, also known as an eyesore, behind Moulton Hall that they dug a drainage ditch to get rid of. Also, it turned out that was a 15,000-year-old peat bog. And so I actually found this map, which I thought was really cool, because I'm pretty sure that's the drainage ditch that they used to drain it. They built a parking lot over the swamp on one side and a building on the other side that people still think is sinking into the bog. We also found where there's a dorm called Tri-Towers that was built in the 60s. There used to be something labeled marsh on one of the old campus maps. And it's very exaggerated here, so I'm not sure if they wanted it to be like a water feature. This is I've decided that this map must be like a conceptual map and not like a reality map, because it never looked like that. So we knew that something was going on there. And then again, these are USGS aerials, found the wetland in the farm fields, these two wetlands here, and then by the time, so that's 52, and then by 62, you've got another drainage ditch. So by wetland, this one is actually still there, so that's cool. And then by the 1990s, the university, well, I wouldn't say the university got smarter, sorry, can't say it, but they disturbed a wetland, and I had to have this map up for you guys, because this map is not mine. It is not my map. And it's from the student newspaper. I thought you'd like the North Arrow. And it's it's showing how the university built this rec center, and they disturbed the wetland. The EPA caught wind of that and came in and was like, you need to rebuild that wetland. And so we ended up with this really beautiful wetland that's right in front of all the treadmills and stuff on the rec center. And it's also, the stream is now part of the disc golf course, which is interesting. There's like a little bridge over it. But they were required to rebuild, to restore the wetland, to rebuild the stream the way it used to be. And then they also had to preserve more wetlands on the edge of campus, because the EPA was also angry with them for polluting too much out of their coal-powered power plant. So Kent State wetlands today, it's uneven. But anyway, what I ended up doing with the students was making this map that shows these three former wetlands, and then current existing wetlands, and then this kind of weird restored wetland. This is another one that I could never figure out what happened, but it's there, so that's great. Beavers are there, and they're flooding the buildings on campus, but that's another story. Okay, so I wanted to get through that, so what I'm really here to talk about is how I ended up building this big map. So first thing you've got to do is find contour lines. USGS did not cut it. Yeah, do not do one foot contour is not, you can do it. Just because you can do it does not mean you should do it. So I ended up doing 5-foot contours, and it looks, I mean, I don't know, that looked good to me. I don't really know what I was doing, but that was probably too much too, and you will see why. So these are all of my different elevations. It just doesn't quite match up, but you get the idea. Going from the low elevation where a lot of the wetlands are up to the two high points on campus where the yellow spots are. Then the next thing that I did was I had this file, but there were all these tiny little features that were just like noise, and so I got rid of those excuse me, by sorting the length of feature and then just deleting all of those and then doing some simplifying. And believe it or not, like this is 1,000 features and this is 21,000 features, so there was no problem in getting rid of lots of features, and I still had plenty of topo contour lines to deal with. So then I brought that from QGIS into Illustrator, and so the goal was to have this 4-foot by 6-foot map. It used to be by 8 feet, so this was, I reduced my expectations. So I was like, okay, 4 feet by 6 feet because of the size of the campus. Move it to Illustrator, connect all the contours that are on the edges of the map that are kind of the lines that are going off the map. You guys probably know a smarter way to do this, but I just went in and did it by hand and like connected the lines. And so I did that. I filled with different colors. It looks really pretty. I filled it with colors so I could keep track of the layers. And I created this grid so that I knew I would end up with these little island pieces in the higher elevations, and so I wanted to be able to figure out where they went without having to search everywhere. So just to zoom in on that map, you can kind of start to see what I did, and then if you look really close, you can see I labeled each individual piece with the elevation and the letter that matched the quadrant that it was in. It seemed to work pretty well. So here are all of my, so I pulled each of these color layers off and put them into a new Illustrator file. And so that's what each of these are, and it looks fun. Here's a tip. Don't put all your little islands on one page. It looks really cool, but it takes many hours. I think it was like 6 hours or 8 hours that it took to print this, or to cut this one page out of the MDF board that I ended up using. And so it looked cool, felt efficient, not a great idea, because if anything goes wrong during those hours, I was like, I have no idea what happens next. So I ended up with 754 pieces. And so for each of the layers, or each of the elevations, which is shown in these different colors here, I drew an outline of the board that I would be cutting out from, and the X's represent boards that are whole, so I didn't have to cut from them, so that was good. So each of these boards, each of these X's is a MDF board that's full, and so you can see the bottom layer, the lowest elevation is 3 complete boards next to each other. And then this one goes on top of it, and there's a piece here that's cut out and put somewhere else. This goes on top of that, et cetera, and eventually you get smaller and smaller and smaller until you get to the teeny tiny highest elevation. So in terms of the budget, the MDF boards cost $13 at Home Depot. I originally bought a bunch of boards that were $8 made of something else, and it turned out it like emits formaldehyde or something. And so the lab guy told me, the student I was working with told me it was okay, and then his boss was like, So that's like doubled my price. And then I got charged for the laser cutter use, basically like the lowest. It was very cheap because it was through the university, but it still cost $145. I charged all this to my department, so it's all good. So here is what it looked like. It's like, I would be like, okay, here's one board next to the other board, then the last board. This is a separate piece that got cut out. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. And there's my letter grid on the background. So this is where I cut it. I got to hang out in this super cool new building. We have a huge new maker space, which is great. And we have this huge laser cutter that I used. And this is, if you've ever worked with laser cutters, you know you have to put everything into this super skinny red, specific red. and then anything you want etched on there, which in my case was the names of the pieces, it has to be in blue. So that's kind of the technical part of it. I don't know the name of this huge laser cutter, but basically you had to be there the whole time. I worked with a student, but I had to be there, and eventually he trusted me enough to let me put the boards on myself. So that's kind of what they were looking like as they were coming out. These are some of the pieces. You remember how I got rid of all the small pieces? I still had a lot of small pieces. Some of them just didn't make it because I couldn't figure out what they were because the numbers were just too small to fit on there. So this is where spring break happens. Oh yeah, so do not do this right before spring break when the makerspace is about to close down, because you will discover that you actually double cut one board and then didn't cut another one. So I will show you what that looks like in a second. So this is my family and I and a couple of friends that showed up for like the photo op and then they left. So it was mostly like, this is my co-author. But I've got my kid and my husband who is amazing. Definitely marry someone who loves to do crafts because they will help you out a lot. And so they were there helping me out for 20 hours. So it was 3 days in spring break. Had a hotel reservation the next day. I'm like, we have to be able to leave. We have to do it. Oh yeah, and also glue does not keep MDF boards together. You need to get an electric staple gun. So that was a helpful thing that I didn't know before we did this. So another tip, invest in childcare, in this case Legos. The kid was happy the first 2 days. By the end of the second day, I'm like, this is not gonna work. Let's break out a huge Lego. And then actually, we were there for 11 hours that day, and that's how long it took them to put this Lego together. So they were very happy. And also, so going back, remember that board that didn't get cut? We ended up doing it super old school. So Andy went out to Home Depot, bought the board, and I taught Andy, did not know the thing where you put the piece of paper up and then you like color on the back of it and then you flip it, and that's how we got the pattern onto the board, and then he cut it by hand. And so yeah, it was a different color too. So anyway, then we put the highest elevations. Those were my last pieces. We did it, yay! Barely on time. Here's a few pictures. So I was like, I didn't even know the day that our exhibit opened how I wanted to color these, and I ended up just coloring them with colored pencil and a colorless blender, and just kind of that'll do for now. Oh, here's that different color board. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, I can see the mouse there. So that's the one that we hand cut. Yeah. So this is just some glamour shots of this map because it really took a lot of effort and time. And that's the exhibit, and those are all the different. Each of these talks about each of the different wetlands that disappeared mostly, and that's that from the side. Lots of glamour shots. We had an art exhibit opening, and I made cookies that were wetland themed. I was really proud of those. Our friend's kid got interviewed by the student television news station. And just to wrap up, we weren't finished doing crazy stuff because we had to move the map all the way across campus. I had smartly gotten a table that was really big and would fit the map, and it had wheels on it, but the table didn't fit in the elevator. So that's my husband Andy and one of our very helpful students like standing there being like, uh-oh. But fortunately, the table actually had a tilt to it, so you could tilt it, but you had to hold on very carefully to make sure that map did not slide off, because it really wanted to slide off. There's all our grad students. We're all there to help. It was great. We put a blanket around it. So we couldn't get it in the door either to the map library. So those are like, yeah, so we like had to put these straps on it from the car, brought those in, and it did eventually get in. Like one piece fell off, so I was very happy. And so this is what it looks like today. It's in my community geography lab, which is gonna exist soon, but we ran into a little problem with that too. So anyway, Totally worth it.